Mamá, huevo, ¿qué mierda es esta?
¡Ay, no! Mira eso.
The shock that shook the world. Why the United States struck Venezuela today. The world woke up today to a development that few expected so suddenly: reports of a direct U.S. military strike on Venezuela. The real twist, the part that instantly turned this from a regional crisis into a global shockwave, is not just that an attack allegedly occurred, but that it is being framed as a decisive move aimed at the very heart of Venezuelan power. According to early reports circulating in international media, the operation was not presented as a conventional war, but as a targeted action tied to leadership, security, and long-standing geopolitical conflict. Whether this marks the beginning of a larger confrontation or a carefully calculated message, one thing is clear: today's events could redefine power dynamics in the Americas. A conflict decades in the making. To understand why the United States would take such an extraordinary step, it is essential to understand that U.S.-Venezuela tensions did not begin today. They are the result of years, arguably decades, of political hostility, economic warfare, and ideological confrontation. Venezuela, under President Nicolás Maduro and before him Hugo Chavez, positioned itself as a fierce critic of U.S. influence in Latin America. Washington, on the other hand, has long accused the Venezuelan government of authoritarianism, human rights abuses, election manipulation, and corruption. Over the years, these accusations translated into harsh economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and support for opposition figures who claimed Maduro's presidency was illegitimate. What today's reports suggest is that the United States may have decided that sanctions and pressure were no longer sufficient. The official narrative: security and law enforcement. From the American perspective, based on past statements and current reporting, the justification revolved around security rather than conquest. U.S. officials have repeatedly accused senior Venezuelan figures in involvement in large-scale drug trafficking networks, labeling the state itself as complicit in what they describe as narco-terrorism. According to this narrative, Venezuela is not merely a hostile government, but a threat that allegedly enables criminal networks affecting the wider region, including the United States. In this framing, today's action is portrayed less as an invasion and more as an enforcement operation, an attempt to neutralize what Washington sees as a criminal power structure. Critics, however, argue that this justification blurs the line between international law enforcement and outright military aggression. The unspoken objective? While official language often avoids the phrase, many analysts believe that regime change has always been the underlying goal of U.S. policy toward Venezuela. Washington has never hidden its refusal to recognize Nicolás Maduro as a legitimate leader, especially after disputed elections. From this perspective, today's alleged strike can be seen as the most dramatic escalation yet in a long campaign to remove Maduro from power. If leadership targets were indeed central to the operation, it suggests that the U.S. may be attempting to achieve what years of sanctions and diplomatic pressure failed to accomplish. This raises a critical question. If a government is removed through foreign military force, what follows? History offers mixed and often troubling answers. Oil, resources, and strategic interests. No discussion of Venezuela is complete without addressing oil. Venezuela holds some of the largest proven oil reserves in the world, a fact that has always given it enormous strategic importance. Although the U.S. claims its actions are driven by security and democracy, Venezuela and its allies argue that control, influence, and access to resources remain central motivations. From Caracas's point of view, today's events are not about crime or democracy, but about sovereignty. Venezuelan officials have long accused Washington of seeking to dominate their economy and dictate their political future. In this interpretation, the attack is seen as a continuation of economic war by military means. Whether oil is the primary motive or a secondary factor, its presence in the background cannot be ignored. Venezuela's response: sovereignty under attack. Venezuela has reportedly condemned the action as a blatant violation of international law and national sovereignty. From their standpoint, no country has the right to carry out military operations on another state's territory without international authorization. The government's rhetoric frames the event as imperial aggression, an attempt by a global superpower to impose its will on a weaker nation. Emergency measures, heightened military readiness, and calls for international solidarity are being reported as part of Venezuela's immediate response. For the Venezuelan population, already suffering from economic hardship, inflation, and shortages, the fear is that this escalation will only deepen instability and suffering. Global reactions and international law. The international response is deeply divided. U.S. allies may express cautious support or silence, while countries opposed to American interventionism, such as Russia and others, are likely to condemn the action strongly. At the heart of the debate lies international law. The use of force is generally prohibited unless it is in self-defense or authorized by the United Nations. Critics argue that unilateral military action sets a dangerous precedent, one that could be used by other powerful nations to justify similar interventions elsewhere. Supporters of the U.S. position counter that extraordinary threats require extraordinary measures. This clash of interpretations underscores how fragile the global legal order can be when power politics take center stage. What this means for the region. Latin America has a long and painful history of foreign interventions, coups, and proxy conflicts. Any U.S. military action in Venezuela revives memories of that past and raises fears of regional destabilization. Neighboring countries worry about refugee flows, economic disruption, and the possibility of the conflict spreading beyond Venezuela's borders. Even if today's action was limited, its ripple effects could be far-reaching. A turning point or warning shot? Perhaps the most important question is whether this is the beginning of something larger or a calculated one-time strike meant to send a message. If it is the former, the consequences could be profound and long-lasting. If it is the latter, it still represents a dramatic shift in how the United States chooses to deal with governments it considers hostile. What cannot be denied is that today marks a turning point. The U.S.-Venezuela conflict has crossed a line from economic and diplomatic warfare into the realm of direct military confrontation, at least according to current reports. Final thoughts. Today's alleged U.S. attack on Venezuela is not an isolated incident. It is the result of years of unresolved conflict, mistrust, and power struggles. Whether justified as a security operation or condemned as illegal aggression, it forces the world to confront uncomfortable questions about sovereignty, power, and the rules that govern international behavior. As details continue to emerge, one reality stands firm. The consequences of today's events will not be confined to a single day or a single country. They will echo across the region and possibly the world for years to come.